Throughout history, social economic environments and technological breakthroughs have always influenced art and design, generating a plethora of ideological movements with contrasting views, yet fueled by the same desire of creative expression. Today, I'd like to dive into a style that proliferated for a small window of time, and then it was rapidly outmoded only to resurface several decades later. One that easily stands out among other design vocabularies in general, including video games. So grab your cafecito and let's discuss the use of Art Deco in the finals. Art Deco Glamora, or simply Glamora, is one of 4 POIs in the Vegas arena. It is located in the southwest quadrant of the map and consists of a large lower base which mainly accommodates the casino, the theater, and the outdoor lounge, and a low-rise tower on top that contains the hotel. Circulating through this building is remarkably fluid. The combination of open layout, interior design, and wayfinding elements allows one to reach different destinations easily, even if it doesn't equate to quick rotations. Because of the casino nature, floor plans feel vast and endless, as if you can walk around without ever being interrupted. This might not be noticeable when playing the finals because most of the buildings are destructible and players are usually avoiding clear lines of sight and open spaces. So if your map knowledge isn't that tuned in, you'll find yourself constantly wandering around like you're trying to solve a maze. And that's actually not a coincidence, but more on that later. Like many buildings in Las Vegas, Glamora uses a variety of surface treatments in both the exterior and interior to provoke certain feelings in users, as well as to create different atmospheres for the diversity of spaces and their functions. From the exterior, there's no problem knowing how to access the building. Every ground level facade has vibrant materials, textures, lighting, and graphic elements that are intended to grab the attention of pedestrians and drive them inside the building. Once in the interior, however, the spatial sequence is carefully designed to either trap players with no map awareness or to reward those with astute positioning. The ground floor is notorious for this treatment. Every primary and secondary entrance leads to inviting reception areas with double-height ceilings, which are immediately followed by lower, narrow ceilings that frame the view of the gambling areas in a horizontal way. Then, every single component from floors, ceilings, columns, and walls to doors, handrails, fixtures, and furniture is in harmony with the flow and purpose of the areas they outline. The second floor is more of an intermediate level that connects visually and spatially through the use of mezzanines in the aforementioned lobby spaces, the theater, and the bar. The third floor is the middle point between the lower base and the upper tower, both functionally and volumetrically. It accommodates the hotel's reception area, the rooms, a bar, and an outdoor lounge that connects visually to the lower level through skylights. And this floor is undoubtedly the easiest and most popular way of navigating across the POI without the worry of getting lost inside. The fourth and fifth floors are exactly the same in terms of layout. Each consists of an array of rooms alongside the inner hallway just like the third floor, except they are distinguished by different colors on the wallpaper patterns. And lastly, the sixth floor, which is reserved for service and maintenance areas. The mix of all of these components results in a mesmerizing user experience caused by the overwhelming amount of stimuli in and out of a structure, and that is precisely the endgame of any casino. In reality, there is a history of controversy regarding casino design and the need to create spaces that lure and trap guests into spending money. In fact, during the pre-launch event, the developers confirmed to me that the decision to mimic that effect had been intentional, for completely different reasons. On one hand, casinos avoid the use of large windows or facade openings to restrict visual connection to the exterior as much as possible. On the other hand, the finals adopts this style to spur more close quarters combat scenarios inside the POIs. This incentivizes players to adjust their class and team composition to encounter enemies and objectives. By now, you probably noticed that all of this becomes very evident when we compare the arena to its source material, Fremont Street. This is the representative place in Las Vegas that has been included in virtually every television show, movie, and in this case, video game that wanted to depict the famous casinos and the glittery lights of the city. At a macro perspective, Fremont Street Experience, or FSE, occupies the western 5 blocks of the street with a space frame that houses an LED display canopy. The main passage from east to west is exclusive to pedestrians, and intersections with other streets are closed by permanent stages for events, with the exception of the Casino Center Boulevard that intersects the FSE at the middle. Now, at the micro landscape is where this attraction really takes off. The barrel vault canopy extends over 400 meters in length, with a peak height of 27 meters. This provides an uninterrupted pedestrian mall with plenty of establishments on each side of the street and 2 levels of ziplines above the ground level. Without a doubt, Embark has once again created an incredibly accurate portrayal of a real-life location. And even though they intentionally duplicated many of the small and large-scale attributes for gameplay purposes, they made sure to inject the virtual arena with an architecture style that amplifies the extravagant, luxurious, and glamorous atmosphere of Vegas. Generally traced to the International Exhibition of Modern, Decorative, and Industrial Arts in Paris 1925, where it was first exhibited. The style originated in a time of intense aesthetic experimentation alongside many other modernist movements: minimalism, expressionism, futurism, constructivism. Modernists were turning their backs on history and looking into the future. But so did Art Deco, except it wasn't entirely modernist. Despite its rejection of traditional models and the use of industrial materials, Art Deco exalted ornamentation, color, and art forms, all of which were discarded by modernists. This approach became the staple of the modern Metropolis, as it was particularly suitable for a variety of building forms: skyscrapers, theaters, housing, and commercial complexes such as Glamora. And this POI simulates many of the core features that make Art Deco a true, unmistakable style. Influenced by the abstract and geometric forms of Cubism, Art Deco buildings are often visible from any angle. Instead of appearing two-dimensional like most structures' facades, this architecture style consistently appears three-dimensional. It makes use of chamfers or curves in corners, stepped or setback facades, and sharp-edged appearances to convey a sense of depth, regardless of the building typology. As a matter of fact, even buildings that aren't skyscrapers, like this casino, have a sense of verticality. It's mainly achieved through the use of vertical window treatments, smooth wall surfaces, and repetitive stylized decorative elements. And this is where Art Deco becomes Art Deco. Normally, they feature abstract geometrical forms like zigzags, chevrons, lightning bolts, sunbursts, or floral patterns usually inspired by the exoticized crafts of ancient cultures in Mesoamerica, Africa, Egypt, India, China, and Japan. These patterns are then extensively applied throughout the exterior and interior surfaces. Lastly, Art Deco often employs the use of bright, vibrant colors inspired by Fauvism, which favored pairing complementary colors like purple and yellow, magenta and green, or orange and blue. The sum of these ornate elements produces a sophisticated and anti-traditional elegance. It's a style that rivals its less is more counterparts with a more than enough argument. And although it couldn't survive the ever-changing context from which it was conceived, it ingrained a far-reaching influence across arts and culture through time, which allowed the style to have revivals several decades later in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. While we can certainly attribute this phenomenon to the economic cycles in history and the timeless appeal of the style to represent wealth and prosperity, I believe Art Deco bridges the gap between designers and users. It seamlessly conveys its intention and beauty without leaving it up to interpretation. The principles it borrows from other styles, form, function, materials, ornaments, colors, all become intuitive to the eye. When we look at Art Deco compositions, we immediately recognize the style and what it's representing. Nothing less, nothing more. It quite simply is what it is while separating itself from other styles. And that is something I continue to pick up from Embark's environment design in their game. This is the third time I've gone overboard analyzing a portion of a map that might seem rather obvious or completely irrelevant to some. And that is fair, don't get me wrong. But this somewhat academic approach has led me to understand why the finals arenas just feel different from other believable maps in franchises like Call of Duty or Battlefield. Monaco, Seoul, and now Las Vegas, they all have this recurring theme of intentionality in both macro and micro design. It's not just about what city should we do next, but more towards does it fit within the vision, lore, and mechanics of the game? And if so, how will it convey all of these core principles through gameplay? You see, the relationship and combination between layout and environment, between form and style, between exterior and interior, between player and action are all deeply relevant to game design. And although it's certainly nothing new, it only seems apparent when actually being discussed and studied in detail and as an overall system. The truth is, during my research for this part of the video, I revisited various theoretical sources that I studied back in architecture school, which underlined what I was noticing from this model. I called this chapter Less is a Bore because while it perfectly encapsulates the Vegas level design, its use of Art Deco, and quite frankly the finals as a whole, it's also an antidote to my previous essay analyzing Mies van der Rohe's famous modernist dictum, less is more. This adjusted phrase was actually coined by Robert Venturi, who was an American architect and author of the book Complexity and Contradiction in Architecture from 1966, in which he turned Mies' phrase upside down and first gained acclaim for his theories and writing. Though Venturi disowned the title, he was often called the father of postmodernism. His design philosophy promoted the use of multiple layers of pattern, color, and texture to create a visually stimulating environment that celebrated complexity, abundance, and maximalism. Later on in 1972, together with his wife and partner Denise Scott Brown, they published the book known as Learning from Las Vegas, in which they studied various aspects of the city, including the commercial vernacular, lighting, patterns, styles, and symbolism in its architecture. Although the subject was the city, this manifesto wasn't really about Las Vegas, but instead about focusing architectural thought and action on the here and now. They were frustrated with how modernism had grown stagnant and pleased with itself. It went from being more to being bore, uninteresting. As theorists and designers with radical ideas, they redirected away from modernism to a more exploratory design approach that openly drew lessons from architectural history and responded to the everyday context of the American city, creating their own juxtaposed and contradictory style. They wanted architects and planners to understand cities as they are rather than how they wish they might be, and then use that knowledge as the basis for new architecture. It was an invitation to question how we look at things in a more tolerant way, to be expressive and creative, while referencing history with individuality and abundance, which in turn is the thesis of my video essays. The Finals isn't necessarily a new shooter, it's a collection of different art styles and first-person shooter mechanics. A blend of embarks past games and aesthetics, a mixture of observations to the current state of the industry and the genre, an insistence to achieve memorable game experiences. Therein lies its uniqueness. Every aspect, from macro to micro, has been intentionally designed to create a visually stimulating experience that celebrates the relationship and combination between the studio and their titles, between the developers and the players, between the players and the game. And it's why I contemplate it for what it is right here and now.